They say if your home feels peaceful, you've won in life. For a long time, I believed that. I had the house, the car, the job, and I had Jenna, my wife, my supposed partner, the woman I thought I'd grow old with. We lived in the kind of neighborhood where nothing ever really happened. Trees lined both sides of the street. Everyone waved politely, and you could hear sprinklers more often than sirens. From the outside, everything about our life looked picturesque. A charming two-story home with a trimmed lawn and white shutters. Jenna took care of the inside. I paid the bills and managed my work. We had our little routines: morning coffee, Friday night takeout, weekend drives. Nothing explosive, just steady, comfortable, familiar. But comfort can be deceiving. Sometimes it's not peace. It's just quiet before a storm. I first hired Luis to help out with the yard when I injured my back. He was a quiet guy, younger than me, early 30s maybe, with a strong build and those sun-darkened hands that only come from real labor. He didn't say much, just worked hard. Jenna seemed to like him. Too much in hindsight. It started subtly. I'd come home from work and find him chatting outside. She'd be in a tank top, leaning on the porch railing, laughing at something he said. Sometimes she'd offer him lemonade, and I'd brush it off. I mean, she's being polite, right? Still, something tugged at the back of my mind. A small, sharp needle of discomfort I couldn't shake. One afternoon, I stepped into the kitchen and caught a glimpse of them from the window. Luis was showing her something on his phone. She laughed, tilted her head, touched his arm. Too familiar, too easy. But when I asked her later what it was about, she just smiled and said, "Oh, nothing, just some meme." You wouldn't get it. That phrase, you wouldn't get it. I remember it stuck with me all evening. Over the next few weeks, I noticed a shift. Jenna became distracted. She'd zone out during dinner, forget plans we'd made, suddenly remember errands when Luis was due to show up. She dressed up more, even if she wasn't going anywhere. Lipstick for no reason. Tight jeans on laundry days. I didn't want to jump conclusions, so I told myself I was being paranoid. But I wasn't. One night, after working late, I came home to find the house unusually quiet. Jenna wasn't in the kitchen, where she usually waited. No lights on downstairs. I called her name. No answer. Then I heard something upstairs. Light footsteps. A door creaked shut. I moved quietly up the steps, careful not to make a sound. Our bedroom door was closed, but not fully. I pushed it slightly, just enough to peek through. No one was inside, but the window to the backyard was wide open, the curtains swaying in the breeze. That night, I barely slept. I wanted to believe she was loyal, that I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew the signs. I just didn't want them to be real. I told myself I needed proof. Not suspicion, not gut feelings. Proof. The next morning, Jenna acted like nothing happened. Made pancakes. Kissed me goodbye. Said she'd be taking it easy today. Luis came by around noon. I watched from the upstairs window as they spoke near the garden. She laughed again, touched his arm again, and I just stood there, watching. It was the first time I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, like a ghost haunting the life I thought was mine. I didn't say anything that day, but in my head, I started preparing. Because if she thought I would just sit back and let it happen, she didn't know me at all. They say when something breaks inside of you, it doesn't happen all at once. It's a crack, a small one. You can ignore it, tape over it, pretend it's not there, but it spreads, slowly, silently, until it tears right through the core. That's how it felt living with Jenna after that night. Nothing had officially changed. We still had breakfast together. We still made small talk. We still kissed goodbye like a damn Hallmark commercial. But every gesture, every smile from her, started to feel like it had an expiration date. There was a lie sitting between us, like a silent third guest at the table. And I started to count everything. How many times she touched her phone during dinner. How many times she laughed at texts and said, "Just Amy from work," though she never actually spoke about Amy. How often Louise started showing up when I wasn't home, working overtime on flower beds that didn't need more work. I started keeping a log, not because I was obsessive, because I needed facts. If I was going to destroy everything we had, I wasn't going to do it on feelings. I bought a cheap mini camera off a shady site, tiny enough to hide in the bookshelf facing the backyard. Jenna never noticed. She barely looked at me anymore unless she needed something. The first few days were uneventful. Louise would mow, rake, trim. Jenna would stay inside. I'd watch the footage each night like I was studying game tape for a fight I didn't know how to win. Then Wednesday came. At exactly 2:17 p.m., Luis entered the backyard. Jenna stepped out less than a minute later. She was barefoot, no bra, her hair still wet from a shower. She brought him lemonade. She said something I couldn't hear from the camera, but he laughed and leaned in. She touched his chest, just briefly, but it wasn't innocent. I paused the video. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't breaking. It was settling, like the moment your brain finally stops denying the obvious. And it was obvious something was happening. Maybe it had already happened. Maybe it was worse than I thought. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm out. I just saved the footage, dated it, filed it. That night, she made spaghetti, poured me a glass of red wine, sat across from me, smiling like we were newlyweds. I asked her how her day was. Oh, boring. Just errands. Took a nap. You know. I looked at her, really looked, and said, yeah, sounds peaceful. The next day, I called out sick from work, parked my car a few blocks away, and walked back home on foot. I knew Luis was due around 2 p.m. I wanted to see it for myself, not through a lens. I crouched behind a neighbor's hedge and waited like some desperate PI. And when she came outside in that same robe, when Luis approached and they hugged, I felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was detachment. That was the moment I decided she didn't deserve the truth. Not the truth I carried. Not the person I was. She deserved what she had created. A life of performance. So I played my role a little longer. Smiled at her more. Brought her flowers. Kissed her neck. Told her I was planning something special for our anniversary. She seemed delighted. Maybe even relieved. That's the part that still haunts me. She thought she was getting away with it. So I kept watching. Kept gathering. In a secret folder on my laptop, I collected everything. Dates. Times. Clips. Screenshots. I even copied her text one night while she slept. She hadn't bothered to use a passcode. And in those texts, I found confirmation. Explicit confirmation. Jenna, you're the only one who knows what I really need. Luis, he has no clue. Poor guy. Jenna, I feel bad sometimes. But then I think how boring he is. I didn't feel anger. I felt strategy forming. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about what she thought of me. The fool. The man funding her lifestyle while she snuck kisses in my backyard. The man she mocked behind his back like he wasn't a person. And that, more than the betrayal itself, was why I decided she wouldn't leave this marriage without scars. She deserved exposure. Not rage. Not violence. Just the unbearable sting of being seen for who she really was. I already had a plan forming in my mind. A quiet trap. A beautiful one. And the best part? She'd walk right into it. Smiling. Revenge isn't rage. Not the kind that lasts. True revenge is meticulous. Cold. Patient. The way a surgeon makes an incision. Not to kill, but to make someone live with what's been cut open. After I read her messages to Luis, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at my laptop screen in the dim glow of our bedroom and thought, she thinks I'm boring, predictable, safe, so I gave her exactly that. I acted like the same quiet, supportive husband. I went to work, came home on time, brought her flowers for no reason. I even thanked her for keeping the house so warm while I was busy with life. She ate it up. The guilt, if it was ever there, was buried so deep she couldn't hear it anymore. What she didn't know was that I had already booked the hotel, rented the suit, arranged the call. I was going to tear her world apart using the very image of the man she thought was harmless. It started with research. You see, I'd never hired an escort in my life, never even considered it. But now I needed to understand exactly how the system worked, how one could book discreetly, pay anonymously, and, most importantly, remain untraceable. That part was vital. I made a fake name, Derek Slate. I bought a burner phone. I even created a Gmail address that sounded just real enough, derekslate25@gmail.com. I used photos of someone else's apartment as the location I was staying in, rented the space for one night under a different name through a short-term rental app. Cash only. Every step, every message was thought through and calculated. Then I found her. She didn't list her face, just some blurred body shots. But I knew those curves. The tattoo near her hip, the way she bent slightly in her pose, like she'd done hundreds of times in the mirror. I recognized her instantly. She had an alias, of course. Sierra. How cliché. I messaged her under the fake name. Simple at first. Hi, Sierra. Looking for an hour this Thursday. Discretion important. Downtown location. You available? She replied within the hour. Short, professional. Available 7 p.m. rate. 500. Screening required. I gave her what she needed. Burner number. Safe location. Then waited. She confirmed. Just like that, my wife had scheduled time to sleep with a stranger. With me, she had no idea. That day, I came home early and told her I had to go out of town for a quick work conference. She barely looked up from her phone. Okay, babe, safe flight, she said, kissing me with empty affection. I left that night, rented the apartment, set up 2 hidden cameras, one in the lamp base by the couch, one behind the wall mirror, both activated remotely from my phone. At 6:58 p.m., there was a knock. I opened the door. She stood there in heels and a long black coat. Her hair was styled perfectly, her lipstick fresh. She looked beautiful in a distant, cold way, a version of her I hadn't seen in months. Professional, practiced, hollow. She didn't recognize me at first. I wore a hat, low, glasses, spoke slower. I let her step inside and close the door before I said anything. Then I whispered, "Nice to finally meet you, Sierra." She froze. I watched the blood drain from her face, watched her lips part slightly, her hand shaking just a bit on the strap of her purse. What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice brittle. I smiled, a soft, deadly kind of smile. "You tell me. You walked in here to meet a man named Derek. I'm just the one who answered the call." She turned to run, but I stepped in front of the door. "Calm. Still. Don't. I'm not here to hurt you," I said. "I just want to see how far you'd go." Her eyes darted around the room, looking for a camera. She knew she'd been caught, but still couldn't process it. The silence stretched. "Is this some kind of test?" she asked. I laughed once, dryly. "No, Jenna. The test was whether or not my wife was still my wife." She failed. I stepped aside, picked up her coat from where it was slipping off her shoulder, and handed it to her. "You should leave." She looked at me like I had stabbed her, and maybe I had, in the only way that mattered. Quiet, precise, irrevocable. As she stepped out the door, I called out, "By the way, I filmed everything, for insurance." She paused, glanced back, eyes filled with disbelief and shame. "And don't worry," I added, "no one will see it, as long as you stay gone." She left without another word. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I sat on the edge of the bed in the rental unit and watched the footage again. Not for pleasure, not for satisfaction, just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't. She came to sell herself, and I gave her something priceless in return. A mirror, and when she looked into it, she saw exactly what I'd been seeing for months. The morning after everything went down, I drove back home like nothing happened. That's what struck me the most. How normal the world still looked. The same sun shining, the same radio static, the same neighbor walking his dog. Nobody knew that something irreversible had just happened, that the woman I shared my bed with had stepped over a line you don't come back from, and I had pushed her off the edge without blinking. When I walked in, the house smelled like vanilla and lemon cleaner, like she'd spent the night trying to pretend nothing had happened. She was already in the kitchen, making breakfast, acting like it was any other day. I stood in the doorway and just watched her. She turned, smiling too wide. "Hey, you're back early. How was the conference?" I stared at her for a second, then smiled right back. It was eye-opening. She blinked, the first sign that the ground beneath her was already beginning to shift. We didn't talk about it that morning, or that night, or the next day. She must have thought I'd changed my mind, that I was going to pretend it never happened. She even tried to touch me one night in bed, softly running her hand down my arm like nothing had fractured. I let her, just to see how far her denial could stretch. But inside, the separation had already begun. Not the dramatic kind, the surgical kind. Quiet, precise, like amputating a part of yourself that's rotting before it spreads. By the end of the week, she started asking questions. "Are we okay?" "We're fine." "You seem distant." "I've just been tired." It was killing her more than any confrontation ever could. The silence, the peace. She wanted me to yell, to cry, to accuse, but I gave her nothing. Because she wasn't worth anything anymore, not to me. Then she broke. One night, I came home and she was sitting on the couch, crying, glass of wine in hand. She looked up like a child who'd broken something she couldn't fix. Please talk to me. I set my keys down slowly. About what? She hesitated. About us. I know I've been distant. I've been confused. But I love you. That word used to mean something. I nodded and said, okay. She blinked. Okay. I sat down across from her, elbows on my knees. I'm going to ask you one question. And if you lie, we're done forever. If you tell the truth, maybe we can talk. She swallowed. Okay. Have you ever slept with anyone since we got married? Her face drained. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Don't lie. I said, cold and calm. You're terrible at it. She nodded slowly. Then, finally, yes. I sat back like I just finished reading a bad novel and tossed it aside. She started crying harder. It didn't mean anything. I didn't know how to tell you. I hated myself after. I thought if I kept it hidden, it would just go away. So you kept doing it? I asked. She looked up, eyes wide. Yeah, I said. I know about Louise. I know about the other name. Sierra. I know about the nights you worked late or went to Amy's place. I know all of it. She looked like she was about to vomit. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't, I said. You freed me. That broke her. She dropped a glass. It shattered on the floor, and she fell to her knees trying to pick up the pieces like it would somehow fix what she'd done. Please, she whispered. Please, just give me a chance to explain. No, I said. I gave you a life. You gave me a lie. Then I handed her the envelope. Inside was a printed transcript of our entire exchange from that apartment. Every word, every still frame. She stared at it like it burned her fingers. This is yours. I won't use it. I'm not interested in dragging you through court or humiliation, but you'll pack your things. You'll leave this house by the end of the weekend, and you'll never contact me again. She was shaking. I don't have anywhere to go. That's not my problem anymore. She tried to reach for me. I made a mistake. No, I said, a mistake is forgetting a birthday. Sleeping with strangers for money and lie about it for over a year, that's a lifestyle. Then I turned around and walked to our bedroom. She didn't follow. I never looked back. That weekend, I changed all the locks, blocked her number, told her parents only that we had separated, didn't give details. I didn't need to. Let her tell whatever story she wanted. I didn't check her social media. I didn't respond to the one email she tried to send a week later. I deleted it unread because she didn't deserve closure. Closure is for two people who tried, who lost their way. She made a choice again and again, and I made mine. And for the first time in a long time, the silence in my house didn't feel like a threat. It felt like freedom. They say revenge doesn't fix anything. They're wrong. It doesn't bring back the past. No, but it gives you something else. Clarity. A stillness. Like the kind that comes after a forest fire. The world looks scorched, blackened, but somehow cleaner. You can breathe again. A month passed. Then, too, the house was quiet, but not heavy. I started leaving the TV on for no reason. I cooked meals just for myself and didn't have to wonder who was lying across from me at the dinner table. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. My friends kept asking what happened. I just said, we grew apart. And that was enough. The truth was like a loaded gun I kept locked away. Not out of fear, but because I didn't need to use it. I'd already pulled the trigger. One evening I came home from work to find an envelope taped to the front door. No name, no address, just sealed. I opened in the kitchen under the flickering light. Inside, a handwritten letter. I don't know how to live with what I did. Every day since that night, I see your face the moment you open the door. I know you think I deserve to be forgotten, and maybe I do, but I wanted to tell you that I quit everything. I moved back in with my mother. I'm going to therapy. I deleted every profile. I know it won't change what I did, but I'm not pretending anymore. I'm sorry. No signature. I folded the letter and dropped in the trash. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel worse. I felt nothing, and I realized that nothing was good. Nothing meant I was healing. A few weeks later, I met someone new, not in a dramatic, movie kind of way. We were both standing in line at a coffee shop. She made a joke about the barista's ridiculous mustache. I laughed. We struck up a conversation. She worked in publishing, lived nearby, and had a dry sense of humor that didn't try too hard. We went for coffee again, then dinner, then drinks. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't volunteer it. Not yet. But with her, I didn't feel like I was holding a live wire behind my back. I didn't feel like I had to perform or guess who I was dealing with when she smiled. She just was. Simple, honest, real. One night, we sat in my living room, wine in hand, music playing low. She asked me why I lived alone in such a big house. I took a long breath. It was the first time I'd spoken her name in months. My wife used to live here, I said. She wasn't who I thought she was. So I asked her to leave. She didn't press, just nodded. Hard thing to go through, she said softly. I looked at her. Yeah, but I don't regret it. That night, when she left, I sat on the couch for a while, staring at the fireplace that hadn't been used in over a year. I got up, opened the cabinet, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were photos. One of them, me and Jenna on our wedding day, both smiling, pretending we knew what forever looked like. I stared at it for a long time. Then I ripped it in half, not out of anger, but as a ritual. Closure isn't always about forgiveness. Sometimes it's just about finally saying, that chapter is over. And mine was, trust isn't something that comes back quickly. It creeps in slowly, like light at dawn. You don't notice it until you realize you're not checking shadows anymore, not bracing for a lie. And yet it still lingers, the memory of being burned. It hides in the corners of good moments, whispers at the back of laughter. Be careful. Remember what happened last time. That whisper had followed me every time I looked at Claire. Claire, her name fit her. Sharp, clear, but soft around the edges. We'd been seeing each other for nearly 2 months now. Nothing official. No grand declarations. Just a string of warm evenings, takeout boxes, half-watched movies, and conversations that somehow never felt forced. She never pried. Never asked too many questions about before. Maybe she sensed there was something buried deep there, something jagged. And maybe she was wise enough not to touch it yet. But one evening, over Thai food and red wine, she asked me something different. It wasn't about the past. It was about now. So, she said, looking at me over her glass, do you believe people can change? The question hit harder than I expected. I set my chopsticks down slowly. Change how? I don't know, she said. Like, really change. Become better. Become someone different. I thought of Jenna, of the letter she left taped to my door, of the apology I never acknowledged, of the promise to go to therapy, to disappear from that life. I thought of the tears, the broken wine glass, the way her voice cracked when she whispered I'm sorry. Then I thought of how none of it had mattered. Some people, I said, yeah. Others? They don't want to change. They just want to be forgiven. Claire tilted her head. That sounds personal. It is, I said quietly. She didn't push, just nodded and sipped her wine. That was the thing about her. She let silence have space. She didn't fill every quiet moment with nervous chatter. She made silence feel comfortable again. I was starting to feel things I wasn't ready for. Things like trust, hope, maybe even something deeper. But I still kept a piece of myself locked away, just in case. The next week, Claire invited me to a party, her friend's birthday. It would be the first time I'd meet anyone from her world. I said yes without hesitation. That Friday night, she looked stunning. Simple black dress, hair tied back, a small silver chain around her neck. She smiled when I picked her up and said, "You clean up nice." "Don't get used to it," I said, trying to play it cool. The party was warm, filled with soft music, fairy lights, and people who hugged and laughed like they'd known each other for years. Claire introduced me as someone I've been spending time with, which made me smile more than I expected. At some point during the evening, I found myself alone on the balcony, drink in hand, looking out over the city lights. Claire joined me a minute later, leaning on the railing beside me. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I like your people." "They like you, too," she said. Then, after a pause, "Especially Rachel." She asked me if you were single. I chuckled. She asked before or after she spilled wine on me? "Before," she said. But I think the spill was part of her strategy. I smiled. Then we were quiet for a while. Then she said it. "Can I ask you something personal?" I glanced at her. "Sure. Did someone really hurt you? Before me?" My jaw tensed. I didn't answer right away. Claire looked down at her hands. "I don't need details. I feel like sometimes you're here, And sometimes you're still holding something back. And I get it. I've had people burn me too. But I want to know if I'm walking into something I can't fix. That hit deep, not because she was accusing me of anything, but because she wasn't. I took a breath. I was married, I said. She cheated. For a long time. Lied to my face every day while pretending to love me. Claire didn't speak. Just listened. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the way she did it. The way she justified it. And how easy it was for her to fake everything. It made me feel stupid. Like I was the only one who didn't know. Claire reached out and touched my hand. You're not stupid, she said. You were trusting. I'm not sure I want to trust again. But you are, she said. Even if it's just a little. You wouldn't be here otherwise. I looked at her, and in that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't waiting for Jenna to come back. I wasn't waiting for revenge to feel sweeter. I was just trying to live again. And maybe, just maybe, I was doing it. I used to think the past stayed buried. That once you've burned it, scattered the ashes, and locked the memories away, it couldn't reach you anymore. That was naive. Ghosts don't knock loudly. They slip in through unlocked windows. They breathe down your neck when you least expect it. It started with a knock at the front door. Claire was over that night. She had just taken off her coat, and we were about to order food. It was raining hard outside, thunder in the distance, the kind of weather that made the world feel quieter, more intimate. 3 knocks. Sharp. I paused. Did you hear that? Claire looked up from her phone. What? I walked to the door, and there she was. Jenna, soaked from the rain, hair matted, eyes tired, a different kind of tired than I remembered. Not fake, not dramatic, just empty. I froze in the doorway. Claire appeared behind me. Who is? I stepped outside and gently closed the door behind me, cutting Claire off. Jenna, I said, my voice flat. What the hell are you doing here? She looked up, lips trembling. I needed to talk. Just once. Please. I glanced back at the door. My hand was already trembling. You could have called. You wouldn't have answered. She wasn't wrong. She hugged her arms tighter, her blouse clinging to her in the rain. I didn't come to make excuses. No. I crossed my arms. Then what is this? A monologue? A scene? I'm getting married, she said quietly. I blinked. Laughed once. Sharp and humorless. To the gardener? She flinched. No. To someone new. And before I did, I had to see you. I had to say I was sorry. Not by text. Not a letter. Just face to face. I exhaled through my nose. Rain soaked my shoulders, but I didn't move. She kept going. You didn't deserve what I did. You were a good man. Kind. Patient. Better than me. And I used that. I stayed silent. I broke something in you, she whispered. And I see it. I saw it that night when you opened the door. I've seen it ever since. I'm not broken, I said. Not anymore. She nodded slowly. I believe that. A pause. Then, there's a version of us that could have been different. I shook my head. There's only the version that happened. She looked down, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw real regret. Not performance. Not guilt. Just a woman who realized too late that actions don't just break hearts. They shape futures. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. This is for you, she said. There's nothing inside you don't already know, but maybe reading it will help you let go of what's left. I already let go, I replied. Then it's for closure. I took it, didn't say thank you, didn't say anything. She nodded once and turned, walking back down the steps and into the storm. I watched her disappear, and then I went back inside. Claire stood near the kitchen, watching me carefully. Everything okay? She asked. I looked at her, really looked, at her steady hands, at the worry in her eyes, at the woman who didn't ask what she wasn't ready to hear. I walked over and took her hand. Yeah, I said, just a ghost. It's gone now. She didn't ask again. She just squeezed my hand and went back to picking dinner. Later that night, after she'd gone home, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No, dear. No, sincerely. Just this. You loved me at my worst, and I repaid you with silence and shadows. I'll carry that. You don't have to. I folded it once, slid it into the back of a drawer, not to keep it close, but so I'd remember some people never find peace. But I had started to. Some moments feel louder than they are. It wasn't thunder or shouting or the sound of a door slamming. It was Claire, sitting across from me, brushing her hair behind her ear and saying, "So do you love me?" She said it gently, not demanding, not even hopeful, just open, vulnerable in a way I wasn't ready for, but knew I had to meet. My first instinct? To run, not literally, but inside the alarm bells rang. Not because I didn't feel something for her, because I did. Maybe too much, maybe more than I should have. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had once slipped a ring on Jenna's finger, thinking this is it, this is forever. The same hands that packed boxes alone when forever shattered. Claire waited patient, but I could see it, her breath catching, her fingers curling slightly on the table. That pause before a heart prepares for impact. I don't know what love looks like anymore. I said finally. I used to think I did, but I was wrong. She didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. I know what comfort looks like, what laughter feels like, what it means when I want to share something stupid just because you'll get it, what it feels like to fall asleep without worrying about what's hidden in someone else's phone. I looked up, and I know that when I look at you, something in me feels quiet, in the best way, like my head isn't spinning for once. Claire smiled just slightly. That sounded a lot like love. Maybe, I said, but if I say it, I want to mean it, and I want it to be whole, not a fraction of what I used to give. She leaned forward, eyes steady. Then don't say it yet, but don't be afraid of it either. That's the thing about her. She didn't rush me. She never did. A few days later, I took her to the lake. It was a spot I hadn't visited in years. A small cabin my uncle used to own, long since sold, but the public dock remained. No crowds, no traffic, just trees whispering in the wind and water lapping quietly against the shore. I brought coffee. She brought silence. We sat on the edge of the dock with our feet hanging over, watching the ripples. "Why here?" she asked softly. This was where I used to come when things got heavy, where I tried to remember who I was before all of it. All of what? I didn't answer right away. I used to be simple, I said. Easygoing, quiet. The kind of guy who believed that love, real love, could fix anything. That if you gave everything, you'd get everything. And now I believe people are messier than that. That love is more about choosing someone over and over, even on days they don't deserve it. Claire nodded slowly. That's still romantic in a way. I turned to her. I don't want perfect anymore. I want honest. I want quiet mornings and stupid jokes, and someone who doesn't look at me like I'm broken. She looked at me, and I saw it in her eyes. You have that now, if you want it. So I asked the question I've been too scared to ask. Do you think I'm still holding on to her? Claire took a sip of her coffee. No. She shook her head. You're not holding on. You're just remembering how it hurt. That hit harder than I expected. You don't flinch when you say her name, Claire added. You don't check out during good moments. You don't look like a man waiting for it to fall apart. You're scared, yeah, but you're here. I leaned back on my hands, looking up at the sky. I didn't think I'd ever get to this point. She smiled. Then maybe it's time to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. I looked at her again. Claire, she raised an eyebrow. I'm not ready to say the word. Not yet, but I'm still here. Still waking up thinking about you. Still smiling when your name lights up my phone. Still choosing to be here, even on the hard days. Claire's hand found mine. Then that's enough, she whispered. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to Jenna, not to Claire, to myself. It wasn't long, just a few lines. A reminder, you were not ruined by her. You were reshaped. And now you get to decide who you become next. Let it be someone who believes again. I folded it and slipped it under a book on my nightstand. I didn't need to reread it. I just needed to know it was there, like a lighthouse in case the waves ever got too rough again. I didn't expect to see her again. Not after that last visit in the rain. Not after the apology. Not after the silence. But ghosts don't knock twice unless they're desperate. It was a Friday evening when I saw the message. A simple email from an unfamiliar address. Subject: Important, Jenna. For a second, I hesitated. Then I opened it. I'm sorry to do this, but I need your help. Please. He found out. He's threatening me. I have no one else I can trust. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm scared. I'm outside your house. My hands froze. I stood from the couch. Claire in the kitchen humming softly while she poured wine. I walked to the front window and peeked through the curtain. She was there, again, but this time not soaked, not shaking. She looked hunted. Claire noticed a change in my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I hesitated. "It's her, Jenna." Claire put the wine down. "Outside." I nodded. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked gently. That surprised me. "No, I want you to stay, but I need to talk to her." Claire nodded once, slow, and sat down. "Then I'll wait here." I stepped outside. Jenna stood from the porch swing like she'd just been sentenced. "What happened?" I asked. Her eyes were wide, tired, bruised beneath from lack of sleep or tears or both. "My fiancé," she said, "the one after you. He found out about what I did with the gardener, with everything. Someone sent him photos, messages, and now he's threatening to ruin me. At work, with my family." I folded my arms. "And you came to me?" "You were always the one who fixed things," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, I was the one you broke things with." And I picked up the pieces. She bit her lip. "Please, just help me figure out what to do." And I realized something in that moment. She didn't want me. She didn't even want redemption. She wanted a shield, a safety net, someone to absorb the damage. But that wasn't me anymore. I looked at her, and I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt tired. "Jenna," I said calmly, "you made choices over and over again. And now the weight of those choices is finally catching up to you. I'm sorry someone's threatening you. No one deserves that. But I can't be the one to clean up your mess." She looked like she might fall apart. "So that's it? You're going to let him destroy me?" "No," I said. "You're going to stop him. You're going to take responsibility and handle this like the adult you weren't when you broke us." She looked stunned. "I spent months rebuilding myself." I continued, "finding someone who didn't lie to me every day, who didn't pretend love was enough to justify betrayal. I'm not throwing that away for you." She nodded slowly, like she finally understood. "I'm sorry," she said again, but this time with a little more weight. "For everything." "I know," I said. She turned to leave, and this time I didn't watch her go. I stepped back inside. Claire stood at the counter, sipping her wine like nothing had happened. "How'd it go?" she asked. "She's in trouble," I said, "but not the kind I can fix." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. "Yeah, I didn't save her," I said, "and I'm still okay." She walked over and kissed me lightly on the cheek. That's what healing looks like. Later that night, I deleted the email. No reply. No second thought. I lay in bed, Claire's head resting against my chest, her breathing slow and steady. And I whispered a word I hadn't said in years. Not to Jenna, not to anyone. Safe. Because for the first time in a long time, that's what it felt like to be with someone. Not perfect, not thrilling, but steady, safe, real. The door clicked shut behind Jenna that weekend, her footsteps fading as I stood in the empty kitchen, the silence heavier than I expected. I leaned against the counter, the vanilla scent lingering, and thought, she's gone. The broken glass still glittered on the floor, and I muttered to myself, her mess, the relief of faint pulse. I added, no more lies, the resolve a shield. The room was still, and I felt the crack heal, the house mine again. The clock ticked, and I knew the start was real. The house felt different. That morning, I swept the shards, the broom scraping, and thought, clean slate. No, Jenna's no pretense. And I muttered, quiet now, the solitude a gift. I added, no shadow, the peace a wave. A neighbor waved, morning, Michael, and I nodded, hey, my voice steady. The window showed the yard, and I felt the life shift, the past a ghost. The dust settled, and I saw the freedom grow. I locked her out. That afternoon, I changed the locks, the new key code, and thought, secure now. The locksmith said, all set, and I muttered, no return, the control mine. I added, her choice, the plan complete. Her old key clinked into the trash, and I felt the crack close, the house a fortress. The door shut, and I knew the break was final, the life mine. Her absence lingered. That evening, I sat with coffee, the mug warm, and thought, know her voice. The silence was thick, and I muttered, used to it. The relief mixed with loss. I added, her letters, the memory await. The phone buzzed, her parents, and I said, we're done. My tone flat. The call ended, and I felt the numbness lift, the ties cut, the window darkened, and I saw the peace hold, the past fading. I stayed cold. The next day, she texted, "Can we talk?" And I replied, "No," thinking no more. I muttered, let her beg, and added, her doing, the resolve firm. She called, "Please, Michael," and I silenced it, my voice gone. The screen lit, and I felt the cracks shatter, the lover ruin. The chair creaked, and I watched the silence grow, the life astart. I reflected in the quiet. That moment, I stood by the window, the street empty, and thought, she's out. The eviction, the silence, the texts, they closed the chapter. I muttered, not my fault, and added, her path, the doubt a rock. The glass was cool, and I said to myself, move on, the resolve steady. The night stretched, and I felt the crack heal, the life of promise. The stars shone, and I saw the future clear. Claire appeared. That night, I met her at a cafe, her smile warm, and she said, "Good to see you, thinking new start." I nodded, yeah, and muttered, real talk, the hope of pulse. I added, no games, the connection a gift. She laughed, coffee, and I replied, sure, my tone light. The cup warmed, and I felt the life shine, the past memory. The chatter faded, and I knew the bond grew. The past faded. The next morning, I deleted her number, the screen clear, and thought, done. I muttered, no trace, and added, her story, the relief a wave. The phone buzzed, silence, and I felt the crack close, the life mine. The kitchen hummed, and I saw the peace hold, the rock gone. The window showed the sky, and I knew the start was real. I walked forward. That evening, I strolled with Claire, the street alive, and thought, my choice. The air was clear, and I muttered, no regrets, the freedom of pulse. I added, her ashes, the resolve steady. She smiled, nice night, and I said, yeah, my voice soft. The lights guided, and I felt the crack heal, the life of victory. The path stretched, and I saw the future open. Weeks turned into months after Jenna's departure. The house settling into a rhythm that felt like mine alone, a calm I hadn't known in years. I sat on the couch one morning, coffee in hand, and thought, just me. The room was quiet, no tension, and I muttered, peace now, the relief a steady beat. I added, no ghosts, the solitude of strength. The sun filtered in, and I felt the crack close, the life mine again. The cushion sagged, and I knew the healing was real. Life grew steady. That afternoon, I worked at the desk, the papers neat, and thought, normal now. A friend called, how you holding up, Michael? And I said, good. My voice calm. I muttered, new routine, and added, no drama, the stability of rock. The phone buzzed, Claire, and I smiled to pass a memory. The window showed the street, and I felt the life shine, the peace a gift. The chair creaked, and I saw the future grow. Claire deepened the bond. That evening, we cooked dinner, her laugh light, and she said, taste this, thinking, teamwork. I nodded, great, and muttered, real care, the hope of pulse. I added, no pretense, the love a start. She teased, burn it, and I laughed. Not yet, my tone warm. The kitchen hummed, and I felt the crack heal, the life of promise. The pan sizzled, and I knew the connection grew. The garden shifted. The next day, I tended the yard, the shears sharp, and thought, my hands now. No Louisa's touch, and I muttered, clean slate, the control mine. I added, no rot, the resolve firm. A bird chirped, and I felt the life steady, the past gone. The soil moved, and I saw the green thrive, the peace hold. The sun dipped, and I knew the start was clear. I uprooted the memory. That night, I dug at a rose Louise planted, the roots stubborn, and thought, end it. The dirt flew, and I muttered, his mark, the freedom a wave. I added, rip it out, the plan complete. The bush fell, and I said to myself, sometimes to bloom, you must rip out the rot at the root. My tone final. The ground settled, and I felt the crack close, the life mine. The stars shone, and I saw the future bloom. I reflected in the light. That moment, I sat by the fire, the flames low, and thought, she's gone. The calm, the love, the garden, they rebuilt me. I muttered, not broken, and added, her loss, the doubt a rock. The glass was warm, and I said to myself, keep going. The resolve steady, the night stretched, and I felt the crack heal, the life of victory. The logs crackled, and I saw the peace hold. Claire stayed true. The next morning, she brought coffee, saying morning, and I nodded, perfect, thinking, real bond. I muttered, no lies, and added, her way, the hope of pulse. She smiled, relaxed, and I replied, yeah, my voice soft. The kitchen warmed, and I felt the life shine, the love a gift. The cup clinked, and I knew the future grew. The past vanished. That afternoon, I burned old letters, her words fading in thought. Done. I muttered, ash now, and added, her story, the relief a wave. The fire crackled, and I felt the crack close, the life a blank slate. The smoke rose, and I saw the peace hold. The rock gone. The window showed the sky, and I knew the start was mine. I moved on. That evening, I walked with Claire, the street alive, and thought, my choice. The air was clear, and I muttered, no regrets, the freedom of pulse. I added her ashes, the resolve steady. She laughed, good night, and I said, yeah, my tone light. The lights guided, and I felt the crack heal, the life of victory. The path stretched, and I saw the future bloom.